Hello, I'm Mark Laurie. I'm a serial entrepreneur and founder and former CEO of e-commerce companies Diapers.com and Jet.com. Diapers was acquired by Amazon for $550 million in 2011, and Jet.com was acquired by Walmart for $3.3 billion in 2016, at which point I served as the CEO of Walmart's e-commerce business, growing sales from $8 to $50 billion. Today, I'm the founder and CEO of my next venture, Wonder, a food tech company with the vision of becoming the super app for mealtime. Whenever someone wants to eat, whether it's an award-winning delivered food, convenient options to heat or cook at home, or even personalized meal recommendations based on health goals, Wonder will be their go-to app. I watched firsthand as Amazon completely disrupted retail, and now I see a similar opportunity for Wonder to do the same in food and beverage. We've already begun by redefining the food delivery market, replacing a poor customer experience with the most convenient, high-speed, and high-quality offering in existence today. Food delivery as an industry has grown from virtually nothing in 2010 to $100 billion today and is projected to reach $500 billion by 2036. And that's all despite negative NPS scores, minimal innovation, and reliance on the most outdated model that sees inconsistent food, delivery delays, and a lack of variety in many markets. But the real magic of Wonder lies at the intersection of software and culinary engineering. That's our moat. Over the past 5 years, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars employing 200 full-time culinary and software engineers to unlock the ability to put 30 different restaurants across all major cuisines in a single location the size of an average McDonald's with fast cooking and lightly trained labor. This breadth of assortment enables us to simultaneously compete with every fast casual chain in the market, as well as create a whole new restaurant category we call fast fine, which offers fine dining quality food with fast casual speed. So come join us on this historic journey as we disrupt this multi-trillion-dollar global food and beverage market and pursue our mission to make great food more accessible.
Wonderful. Welcome to RestaurantSpaces. Thanks for joining us. We're going to take a fascinating look through Wonder today, this afternoon. But let's take it back a bit because you've both had really fascinating careers and you continue to do so. So, let's have a bit of an overview of where you've been. And Daniel, I'll start with you first. Why don't you hit us with it?
Yeah. So good to see everyone. My name is Daniel Shlossman. I'm the Chief Growth and Marketing Officer at Wonder, and so I lead consumer and revenue and marketing and growth and all of those types of things. Get into a lot of that as we kind of talk today. I've been at Wonder for a little under a year and a half. Came from Sweetgreen, so had been at Sweetgreen for about 5.5 years. From 50, 60 locations to a little over 200 through IPO, building of the first automated restaurant, things like that. So saw some incredible kind of growth there. Have only been in the restaurant industry since that point. Prior to that, I came up in my career at the National Football League on actually like the product and kind of business creation side, and then went to Uber kind of in the early days and scaled first the ride sharing side and launched the first Uber Eats market in Los Angeles. So have had a very, very kind of diverse background that has led me to an industry that I've kind of fallen in love with over the last 6-7 years in terms of restaurants and retail, and excited to chat with everyone today.
Fantastic. Jason, you think you were with us last time at RestaurantSpaces back in 2017 when you were with Red Robin, right?
Yes.
Right? Why don't you talk about your background?
So first, I will say where Daniel and my experiences, I think, are a little bit different, where he comes from the non-traditional restaurant side. I'm very much on the traditional restaurant side. Growing up, starting as a food runner and leaving Red Robin just about 11 months ago as Chief Business Development Officer, and have done kind of everything in between, from operations to growth to branding, and how the consumer experiences come to life. And Wonder has been a blast, and I'm really excited to share what we've been working on and what we've been doing. The only other thing that I would say is, while Daniel and I have very, very different backgrounds, that the one thing we do have in common is there is no one on the senior leadership team apparently over 5'5".
Excellent. Thank you. I guess, first up, I mean, what drew you to Wonder? What what about the opportunity really stuck out at you and then sort of made you make that leap?
Yeah, I can kick off. I'll be honest, after what was an amazing kind of 5.5-year run at Sweetgreen, and I had done a number of different things from product to digital, and I kind of departed there as CMO. I actually was kind of open to leaving the industry. I had this career that had taken me from sports to tech to restaurants, and I got a call on this fascinating concept. I was living in Los Angeles with my wife and kids at the time, but this back east kind of concept in the Northeast called Wonder that had predominantly been innovating in kind of more mobile restaurants, and they were pivoting to brick and mortar. And I took the call, had an incredible first conversation with Mark, and I just saw the vision for what had previously been done when kind of the right combination of technology and I'd say vision had kind of been put into certain industries. You could kind of see where this could maybe go, and I know we'll talk about that.
Sure.
I think from my perspective, I spent 26 years at the same company trying to solve and kind of tweak some challenges and problems that everyone is and has been experiencing, no matter the category that you're in within the restaurant industry. And so as I heard about Wonder, it really made me start to think, why? What's happening? What's happening out there? What are the things changing in the world? And why are things so challenging? And it really is distilled post-COVID to a couple of things. When we think about consumers, the cost of living is increasing. Diversity of the population continues to change people's palates. People are wanting more things like contactless because they're worried about getting sick. There's all these things that COVID has really driven in consumers, including accessible food, delivery, and making sure that you really trust it. And when I started thinking about my career and what I wanted to be really good at and where I'm in my sweet spot is thinking about how the world and time only moves forward, not backwards. Meaning so many people are hoping that we get back to what it was before COVID, but that will never happen. And as I began thinking about the opportunity that Wonder was posing out there, you can be a disruptor or you can be disrupted. And I wanted to be on the other side of that, and I think that's something that really appealed to me about Wonder.
Okay. What we're going to do is, we've seen the video. I would like to start kind of nebulously or like sort of large.
What the heck is it?
And then we're gonna kind of because it is kind of, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And then as we go along, we're going to kind of zoom in on different areas of the operation and get to know it a bit better. So I guess for both of you, what is Wonder? what exactly is? Let's start that like that broad and then go.
Yeah, I think the best way to be able to describe Wonder, and you heard Mark talk a little bit about it on the video, but more importantly, what are the consumer challenges that we're trying to solve? With inflation, diversity of menus, the continuous evolution in the restaurant industry, which has been happening the entire time, by the way, including post-World War II and how consumers moved to suburbanization, and there you had categories like QSR and CDR come from that. I think the same thing, and what Wonder's really solving is, imagine having 30 restaurants, different cuisine types, that are really come to life through these beloved chefs, these restaurants that are top-notch across the country, prepared in our kitchens by our team members, using technology that gives them step-by-step instructions to ensure consistency and speed. You can get it dine-in, you can get it off-premise, although it does skew heavier towards off-premise, and the buildings in the front of the house are built that way. But you can sit down if you choose with flexible kitchens, and I think this is a point here, because typically in kitchens, the line never changes. Everything else, the prep room, the front of the house, all those other pieces changes. But for us, you can move equipment around, you can slide things based on the way that we have it set up, all on a platform, on an app, where you can order not just one restaurant, but from any restaurant, any cuisine type. And so if you want sushi, your kids want pizza, your significant other wants a salad, you can get all of those things from well-respected chefs and great quality food. There is no more veto vote with Wonder. There's only the possibilities of everybody being happy, everybody being satisfied, everybody winning. That's the concept of Wonder.
Okay. Can you talk us through what it's like from the customer perspective? So what's the interface? What does that look like? It's all through the app, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a combination of the digital and the physical. We definitely, and I think any restaurant being built today or being built as of, call it a couple of years ago when Wonder really, switched to this brick and mortar model, you have to really lead with digital first if you want to have it as large of a TAM as possible. And so everything's built for us off of Wonder as a platform. It's a physical space where you can come into and you can order the food and enjoy it as Jason was kind of describing, but it's also an app. And it's where you can access all of these different, restaurants all together in a single order. We really lean into the restaurant brands. In that video, at one point, a bunch of logos flash up, and they're logos that some of you may have recognized from around the country. There's Maidon, which is a Michelin-starred restaurant out of Washington, D.C., DeFaro Pizza out of Brooklyn. We have Fred's Meat and Bread out of Atlanta. It can go on and on. We have the rights that we have purchased and worked with these chefs to onboard onto our platform. And we have these all in each of our locations, and we'll get into how we kind of adapt that in a lot of ways depending on square footage, things like that. But these are real restaurants from around the country, and everything that makes it onto those full menus. We're not just taking the kind of famous Korean cheesesteak from Fred's and just putting that on the menu alongside something else. We have the full menu that if you go to their location in that food hall in Atlanta that you can actually get. And we have that across all different types of cuisine, and with that opportunity to order from multiple restaurants in a single delivery, which is like the number one thing every time we talk to our customers that they love about Wonder, is that it solves those problems that kind of Jason described. And we're able to do that certainly in a digital interface in a way that really resonates with customers, honestly, simply because they're used to it now. When they go to an Uber Eats or a DoorDash, they have access to all those restaurants. The big difference, you can get them all at once with Wonder.
And so you don't operate with third-party delivery operators. It's all through Wonder. That's right.
So we do work with DoorDash, with Uber Eats there, and Grubhub. They're small, very small piece of our business. So especially on the delivery side, it's been built from a 1P perspective, so direct to the consumer. We actually, all the way to the logistics of it, we kind of are focused on this integration from the making and the prep of the food all the way through the digital interface to where you order it, all the way to delivering it actually to you. So we acquired a company out of New York City a handful of months ago called Relay Delivery. Okay. That for anyone who has been to or lives in New York City, the couriers are always riding around on the bikes in New York City. Predominantly did deliveries for Grubhub over the years, but we brought them in-house, and that's our logistics company as well. We're still serving direct to individual third-party restaurants as well, but it allows us to have that extra step of that all throughout the process. It is Wonder that is touching, it's making your food, it's delivering your food, and it's ensuring that great customer experience and how you interact with it.
Okay. But you can obviously access the physical locations as well,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now you call them food halls, right? But it's not like from a customer's perspective, it doesn't look like or operate from the outside looking in as a food hall, right? What's the kind of interface once someone goes in there?
Yeah, I think really what we're trying to convey with food hall is that we have all of these different types of cuisines, all these different restaurants that you have the flexibility in being able to order from any one of them, and you can sort by cuisine type or restaurant. As you walk into the restaurant or into one of our stores, and we have somebody there that helps guide you through the experience. As candidly, it can be a bit overwhelming with so many choices. If you think about going to Cheesecake Factory for the first time and flipping through that menu,
take that and multiply it by 5.
Yeah. It can be overwhelming, but where people really understand it is digitally. And I think the thing that Wonder is doing that's disruptive in this area is you have an Amazon who started out digital and has now moved to brick and mortar. You have a Walmart that started out as brick and mortar and moving into digital. You've never had somebody do both at the same time. And so I think there's a lot to continue to learn around the dine-in pickup piece of it. But what I will tell you is people love the optionality of all of these ways. I can get it delivered, I can dine in, I can sit down, and all on my terms, not on somebody else's. I'm not waiting behind somebody at a counter.
Yeah. How many menu items are there in total across the 30 brands? It's something like over 500, or?
Yeah, I think we're past 550 typically. That if at one of our locations that has all of our restaurant brands in it, that you can order.
And not every location has every brand available?
Most of them do. We do have a pilot partnership that we've kicked off with Walmart. So if you walk into a Walmart, a lot of times you'll see a Subway or a Charlie's Cheesesteaks or something like that in the front of the Walmart. We, in those spaces, which are more like 750 square feet, we're able to put 10 restaurants into those, and we can specifically curate the restaurants that we choose to put there because we aren't putting all 30. So we can look at demographics and opportunities, maybe cuisine gaps that exist in that market. So we have 2 in kind of suburban New Jersey and then 1 in Quakertown, Pennsylvania, where we're testing that concept as well. Our typical locations are about 3,000 square feet, and we can fit, as Jason mentioned, about 30 restaurants into those. Now, I'll say that likely will increase in the future as we continue to have kind of technological advances, things like that.
And I would also say back to the flexibility of the kitchens, the food in New York City, you can assume that the scene is much different than in Oklahoma. But the reality is consumers, as they begin to shift and change, we have the flexibility to be able to not only adapt, but also to bring different types of cuisines that may be emerging in those areas, but not ready for a full-on single restaurant. We can bring more food to people that is more cultural to them or diverse to them.
Yeah, I mean, my family and I moved for this role, moved from Los Angeles, where I had been for 15 years, to the suburbs of New Jersey. And I will say the biggest shock beyond, I grew up in Arizona, then did 15 years in LA, so the biggest shock was winter last year for me, but the next biggest shock was like the food. And there just simply wasn't the same like great food everywhere like I had gotten used to in living in Los Angeles, living in a big city for so long. When Wonder opened up the local one about 1.5 miles down the street from where we're living now, it was great because all of a sudden we had kind of the best of all of these different types of cuisines from around the country, with new ones being launched. The last year and a half, we've been launching a new restaurant every few months. And iterating even the existing ones so the menus change. It's amazing to have like all that variety and again be able to order it all in a single order.
Right. So it's kind of is it kind of accurate to say that it's a living, breathing kind of evolving thing, depending, especially as you expand, right? Because you're just in the tri-state area right now. So as you grow across the country, there's always the capacity to continue developing different brands, right? Okay.
That's right, and continue to evolve not only just the cuisine types that we offer and the number of, but really customize it to that local area. What's important to them? I think most brands say, here's our offering. What we're saying is, we can offer you whatever, what you want, not what we want.
With so many brands in the mix, is it, I guess it's hard for me to wrap my head around I guess, there's no sort of brand loyalty, right? It's kind of just, things appeal to, or is that you trying to build that up as it grows? You get more customers that will sort of adhere to a certain brand, or because it's just such a big mix, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's something we really focus on for sure. I hate saying this, but it's the truth. It's like we're not going to be successful if people fall in love with Wonder. We're going to be successful if people fall in love with the restaurant brands that are available on Wonder. Almost no one says I love Uber Eats. What they do say is, I love my favorite Thai spot that's down the street, and this is the pizza place that I love in my neighborhood. And so if we can offer that within our platform and get you to fall in love with Hota by Jose Andres and Bobby Flay Steak and all of the other great kind of restaurants that we've either brought from around the country or built with these kind of world-renowned chefs, we think that's the ticket to kind of people falling in love with the platform as a whole and becoming customers for life.
And I think one other way that you are able to do that, obviously, is we're selling food. It's got to be really good. Yeah. And you have to have those things that are super craveable on your menu. And we have one Tejas Barbecue, which is a small restaurant out of Texas, and they have a carrot souffle. I will tell you, I would never expect to have tasted that carrot souffle and said, oh my God, I could eat that every day. And I think that's the thing with restaurants versus what virtual brands or ghost kitchens were doing, is our menus are curated and created with those things in mind. What is the craveable thing you must have by each individual restaurant? And I think that's what creates loyalty, both to the individual restaurant, but also to the platform, because you can, every one of those things, you can get the same thing from, same but different. Memorable thing, but different.
Yeah, we talk about it internally as like the kind of the holy grail for restaurants, or if you can have like coffee chain like frequency, but you can have sit down restaurant average order values. If you can combine those two things, you got a pretty good business. Because of our variety and because of how often that you can come back, and because we have the $6 burger on the Burger Baby menu, and we also have a $50 paella for two, or a filet mignon from Bobby Flay Steak, we kind of offer that at any time for anyone, and so we're getting that combination right now. And then footprint-wise, we've opened locations in New York City. We have a number of locations in the suburbs of New Jersey, and now we're expanding out significantly kind of from there. It's working in both urban and suburban settings, which gives us a lot of confidence for really rapid growth ahead.
Okay. In the video, it was described, it was quite a process developing all of this, right? It was how long was that kind of gestation period of pulling that team together? It was over 200 people working on that in the video it mentioned, right? Yeah. Yeah, I guess, can you explain a little bit more about that? And some of them are developed with celebrity chefs and some aren't, and yeah.
Yeah, we have, Mark in the video talks about kind of this combination of software engineering, what would typically be thought of as like tech or engineering, and then culinary engineering, which is a little bit of a different term in a lot of cases, because we are trying to build all of these different menus and make them really easy to make very, very quickly with 3 pieces of all electric equipment in back of house. You have to do some culinary engineering as part of that. You have to figure out, how does the ultimate output feel the same as if I visited Tumble, Texas and went to Tejas Barbecue if you order that brisket at the Upper West Side Wonder location. And so there's a lot of research and work went in there, and we have a chef team of 20, 25 plus that are continuously working on this and improving things, combined with the software tech side of things, where we in the back of house, and Jason can definitely get a little bit more into this, we're not stitching together a number of third-party solutions in back of house for how things are showing up on the KDS and things like that. It's 100% built in-house and owned and operated by Wonder. It kind of connects back to what I was saying earlier of like that everything is built by Wonder kind of for our customers, and making it to where that ultimate customer experience, how fast it gets to you and how great it tastes, everything is kind of driving towards that.
I think I would also add that when you think about the time that it took to, from a technology standpoint, really get the food to a place that's repeatable time and time again. So many times in my career, I've heard people say, well, if you just train the team member better, if they just followed the SOP, I always find that the better way to do it is to ensure that you make the target bigger so they hit it more often. And that's really what the culinary team and the investment on the front end has really been, is making the process of cooking it and assembling it really, really, really simple. We all know that post-COVID, it's not like we're getting more skilled people working. We need to be able to make sure that somebody off the street could do it tomorrow, because the tech, the way that it's assembled, the way it's built is really simple and really easy, and even people like me could do it.
Okay. You can't cook that well?
Trust me, I'm not a good cook. I'm more on the lean cuisine side than I am on the making food.
How many employees do you have working at any given location?
So randomly, when we think about the number of SKUs, the number of menu items, you must think, oh my gosh, you have a lot of people on these locations. And obviously it depends on the volume you're doing and so on and so forth, but on average, there's about 30, which the way that we're able to do that, back to this technology and the simplicity in assembling the food, makes it much easier to flex people up and down. And so, we're able to produce all of those things at candidly higher volumes than I've seen from a revenue perspective, especially during peak hours, allowing for maximum output, not just throughput, but output of those. So it's really about thinking, how can we make it easier on team members, simpler to be able to execute. Therefore, you need fewer people to be able to do it, fewer skilled people.
And you mentioned 3 pieces of electronic equipment before. What
Yeah.
is that kind of proprietary, or can you sort of delve into that? Or
Yeah, it's an oven, a water bath, and an electric fryer. That's the combination. The oven, our culinary engineering team and software engineering team have done a lot in being able to kind of change a lot of the settings and make it very simple from a one-touch perspective to get a lot deeper than what is typically available like off the shelf with those ovens. So that's what a lot of the engineering work went into in the early days. And in the early days of Wonder, when things were being done on mobile trucks, kind of during the pandemic period, we learned a lot of things. This is before both of our time, but I don't think we'd be where we are today if the team hadn't been forced to essentially do this, even for 1 or 2 restaurants on a single truck. It's being able to do all of that in that confined space. You then could port it to a brick and mortar and give a much better customer benefit with that multi-restaurant ordering out of it as well.
And what I love about the equipment side of things is, in a traditional restaurant, what you end up doing, back to what I was saying before, is, hey, restaurant manager, make sure this piece of equipment is turned on at this time, at this temperature. We can do that remotely. That's what we're working towards. So there is you take all the guesswork out of things that people don't have to remember it. So back to, how do you scale and expand so fast with so many new people? You make the process, the tech, simple.
do you have like a kind of commissary facility, or that sort of services a particular region or anything like that, and sort of ships out prepackaged food items?
Yeah, so we have essentially a commissary, a central kitchen that does a lot of the, I'd say, pre-prep. So everything is made to order in-house, back of house. Like, nothing's kind of even started or sitting there and just ready to pop into. There's no microwaves, things like that to kind of finish a meal. But we're really smart about how everything is kind of set up, and we do a lot of supply-demand kind of mapping and planning on a per-store basis of how many filet mignons at 12 ounces do we expect to actually sell. Let's get that many into the Upper West Side location or into our Chelsea location, et cetera. But we do work out of a single location right now in New Jersey from a commissary perspective. That's right.
Okay, cool. Is this something do people confuse the concept with ghost kitchens? Or do you say, is Wonder a ghost kitchen, or is it, do you get that sometimes? Or
Honestly, I would probably answer that. Do I get that within the industry? Yes. Do I get that from consumers? No. Consumers don't think of it as a ghost kitchen. They think about high-quality food delivered by Wonder team members from chefs that they're preparing it fresh. So I don't really think consumers think of it through the lens of ghost kitchens, but remind all of us about ghost kitchens, as I've had some experience on this. If you take certain brands like a Mr. Beast, that was being prepared in locations and restaurants like On the Border that don't have the same cooking procedures, don't have the same kind of standards to be able to produce burgers, but they were. So they were taking their products and morphing it into a hamburger, but it's a Mexican restaurant. So the difference between what we're doing is we're starting with the core fundamental raw ingredients that actually make the product good from what it starts. We're not trying to adapt into somebody else's platform, somebody else's kitchen, and bring that to life. And these are restaurants that actually exist today, like Tejas or Meidon, which is fantastic if you ever get a chance to go to DC. And we're bringing it to life to people closer to where they live.
Yeah, and I think the customer piece is because you can actually walk into a physical Wonder location, and I purposely say that it's not a Wonder restaurant, it's a Wonder location where you access all of these individual restaurants. That's the big piece where it connects and kind of clicks for the customer, where it doesn't feel like a ghost kitchen that is I can't really touch and feel it. A lot of the customers do that. They acquire through, I mean, these, as for any of us, like these stores are really our billboard and how you acquire a lot of your customers. That is a lot of times their first touch point, and then they move into being a digital customer, which is amazing because that's when we get those repeat visits of let me solve dinner via the Wonder platform tonight.
Yeah, okay. How else are you acquiring customers? So obviously the physical locations is part of that marketing strategy like you just mentioned there. So how else are you going after, again, because it's a new thing, and like how are you sort of getting that awareness going?
Yeah, it's definitely, I'd say, with a lot more like e-commerce principles than it is even what I was used to at Sweetgreen in terms of acquiring customers from a retail restaurant perspective. We look a lot at our customer acquisition costs and our LTV, and ultimately it's pretty formulaic of if we can acquire a customer at $30 blended across, we're doing everything from billboards and out of home to digital targeting to direct mail to all of those typical things that like probably all of our different companies do in some ways. But if we can acquire customers at a low enough rate where over a projected 5-year LTV of the customer, so profit that we're going to make off the customer over 5 years, if that's more than that, you're in business. And we've seen, I mean, our most, and this is, I think we'll kind of get into some of the rapid growth, like we're only 18 months, at this point since we opened our first brick and mortar location. We already are seeing what we were acquiring customers at in those early months at Upper West Side. The profit on those customers is already significantly past what it cost us there. That gives us the confidence to do that with every new store opening, which we are, moving very, very quickly. We're at 23 locations open as of today. We'll be at 24 on Thursday. We'll be at 35 by the end of the year. We'll be at 90 by the end of next year. And it's really aggressive kind of growth goals. Some of our partners from a development perspective and architect perspective are in the audience today. But it's pretty fun. We've been able to hit those goals thus far, and seeing how it ultimately translates to the bottom line for the company has really been positive too.
I would also say a couple of things about traditional restaurants. How they open when they open a new store is this pent-up demand, and they get massive influx of volume, tapers off, and then eventually comes back up. The difference with Wonder, because it's a platform and brick and mortar, is it starts out here and continues to grow week over week, month over month, very much like the reference that Daniel was making on e-commerce. It's very different than what a traditional restaurant, brick and mortar would experience, because a platform and combining the brick and mortar. And then, for the folks that are helping us grow already, we thank you in advance for purchasing us so much wine, because we're going to need to drink a decent amount to open this many locations in such a short amount of time. But you may ask why. Why would we do that? Well, back to the acquiring consumers, if you think that it's digital, if you think back to the digital play here, if I just open one here in Springfield, I open another one in Seattle, I open another one in Southern California, that's not how you get people acquired onto an app. They do it because everyone around them knows and is talking about it. So there is a reason why you need to be able to have this really rapid growth in brick and mortar to accelerate the adoption onto the platform, which is working.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of the year, we'll have 10 locations in Manhattan. That means that anywhere from the southern tip of Manhattan up to Harlem, whether you work or live anywhere there, you'll be able to get Wonder delivered. That's going to open up a lot from a marketing perspective of how and what we can do. Thus far, even though we've been very Northeast based, we've had this selection in New York City. We've got Brooklyn. We're getting into Westchester, out in New Jersey. We have these pilots with Walmart as well in Jersey and Pennsylvania. But we haven't had quite that level of density. When we have that, it opens up a lot of things. And I had experience from that. I mean, Sweetgreen had 20 plus locations in that same area in New York City. We could do very different things marketing-wise there. So I'm personally, and my marketing team is like very excited about the opportunities that that's going to bring from like a brand campaign perspective, things like that we think will only kind of pour a little bit more fuel onto that, like that cycle that we're in.
And it's easier to operate them when you have multiple restaurants in an area where you can pull people from.
Right. Yeah, New York and this region seems a really ideal way of sort of getting that to spread like wildfire, right? And you mentioned 90 by the end of next year. Is that all going to be in the same region, or will you have expanded out by then somewhere else? No, same region.
Yeah, so we're really focused on the Northeast right now.
Sure.
We will expand out beyond New York, New Jersey, but we're focused on the Northeast right now because we really do believe that building up the brand in a singular kind of region. There are obviously a number of additional major markets that we can expand into within that, but our focus right now is on the Northeast. We have, especially based on what we've seen even thus far at 23 locations and the success in suburban, the success in urban, even in what I'd start to call rural. We believe that this is going to work across the country and even around the world, but the focus right now is on the Northeast.
Sure. Anywhere else that comes to mind in terms of would be sort of fertile ground for this, where you could do the same thing? I guess is that the kind of idea? Like you build this out, then you might go to, I don't know, LA or something like that and start the same kind of process?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's because of all of the engineering work that's gone in, both from a culinary and software perspective, but specifically on the culinary side, where we do our prep of food and things like that. We're going to need to establish kind of a base and feel good about how we can expand around that. And so there's lots of places that can get to, 6, 7, 8, probably more large areas like that around the country, certainly. But right now, that Northeast is the focus.
No timeline at this point. You're just still focusing on
Yeah. And
sorry to push you.
No,
I was like, if you've ever met Mark Laurie, you know, pushing is what he does.
Yeah.
Look, I think we'll see what the future holds. But what I can tell you is, when we think back to where's the consumer going, what problems need to be solved for them, those are not slowing down. That's only accelerating. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, to Daniel's point, all across the country, but all across the world.
Sure. When you say problems for the customer, I think you guys had a line in the past, I think it was, or maybe the media had grabbed onto it, like solving the problem of dinner. Mm-hmm. I mean, in what sense is that seen as a problem or?
Well, I think one of the challenges that, and probably many of you that have kids have experienced this, which is when you bring a group of people together, they all have an opinion. They all want something. And sometimes it's the same to eat, but oftentimes it's not. And so the problem or challenge is somebody loses in that. Somebody concedes to saying, okay, I'll have X restaurant. But here, you don't have that. You can order whatever you want. And I think that is something very, very different. And I also believe that back to rural America, there's not a lot of option. And so when we can bring optionality of flavors that are diverse and unique to them as the population continues to evolve and change, that's a benefit. That's seeing a problem that hasn't quite shown up everywhere yet, but it is coming.
Yeah, and I'd say essentially that vertical integration, specifically around the logistics piece, I think that Relay was really a key part of the equation for us. We had tested a lot of different things, whether it was third-party delivery to actually having employees deliver to, we had tested kind of everything. And, hopefully that iteration has definitely been part of what we're kind of doing on a day-to-day basis. We are able to achieve times from a delivery perspective. We have this metric internally called O2E, order to eat. And we typically see times in the 20s from when you order on your phone to when that shows up on your door. That's only because we control every step of the process, including having the courier there already waiting, with using FIFO from a software perspective to get it out the door really, really quickly to you. And then that density comes into play here too. When we're able to open so many restaurants in a dense area and use that same fleet of couriers and all of this, it allows us to keep our delivery radiuses much, much tighter, which means that your deliveries are faster, the food is hotter, the customer is more satisfied, and they come back quicker. And that's ultimately what it's all about.
And that's not just, that order to eat is not just in New York City. You could say that that's the anomaly, but the reality is we're doing that in Westfield, New Jersey. We're doing it in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm. I guess it kind of gets really fascinating when you think about the really long-term future prospects, right? I imagine in terms of automated transport, right? If you could plug it into that, is that something you guys think about, or is that someone else? Is Mark thinking about that? So.
Look, I mean, I was in San Francisco this weekend and watched fully automated cars, shuttle people around instead of Ubers. So do I think that's coming? Yes. The world is changing whether we want it to or not. There is no going back. So I think there's going to only be more opportunities to be able to do that. And I think restaurant companies are going to have to be able, right now they individually try and figure this out for themselves, but their core competency is restaurants, food. It's not tech. And I think that's the difference with Wonder, is that we're able to be able to do both. I think candidly through the way that we're structuring ourselves and thinking about people like Daniel and myself.
You guys acquired Blue Apron at some point, right?
Yep.
Which is like a home delivery meal kit service. Well, how does that fit into the whole equation as well?
Yeah, and so we took Blue Apron private in November of last year, so about a little under a year ago. So Blue Apron was kind of the pioneer in the meal kit space. I think most, the brand awareness is still up in the 90% range. So everyone kind of knows, and most people have even tried Blue Apron at some point. We see this as right now, Wonder predominantly, or up until that acquisition, had predominantly been delivering like, I want to eat right now. But the share of kind of stomach and how people think about food, it's like, well, I want to get the burgers tonight for the family, but then I want to make a pasta and a chicken dish tomorrow night with the family. We thought that we could actually bring that together into this kind of singular platform, and that we see a lot of opportunities for much deeper integrations as we kind of move forward, which will come in the kind of coming months as well. And so Blue Apron's now part of the family. We think of it in that same way. We have kind of shifted to talking about Wonder as this trying to have this vision of like the super app of mealtime, and it's solving that kind of mealtime dilemma. Whether you want to cook, whether you want something delivered to you, maybe down the line there's grocery, maybe there's all these other areas as well that we can play in.
How crowded is the space right now? So you got you guys, and I mean, I suppose you're one of the more visible, or kind of, there's been a lot of publicity around it so far.
Sure.
I was reading about Cook Unity the other day, and I know they've got like subscribers in the tens of thousands and something like 1 million meals per month as of last year. So I think it's increased since then. Last RestaurantSpaces in the spring, we had Travis Kalanick come and speak, and obviously from Cloud Kitchens and Lab 37, which is his robotic division, and he talked about the idea that the same kind of line of reasoning. And in the future, everyone will just kind of order because they won't have to. It'll be cheaper than sort of preparing a meal at home. So I guess they're your competitors, and I mean, who else is in this space? Or it's kind of everyone's kind of just forging their own paths, right?
Well, I think, I'll take a stab at this and then let Daniel tie a bow on it. But at the end of the day, who's our competitor? Every restaurant chain, every restaurant, period, every convenience store, every grocery store, everyone. That is the evolution that's happening within the industry for all of us. And so I think Wonder thinks of it very much like everyone's our competitor, yet no one's doing what we're doing. No one's doing and solving, not even cloud kitchens, not the way we're solving it. So I would say, you could argue, is DoorDash a competitor? No, because they're not making the food. Is another restaurant brand a competitor? Kind of, but they only offer one thing. Wonder does both. I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, I think the beauty of food is that everyone eats. Most people like to eat as well. There can be a lot of winners out there, and so we think about it in that way that Jason's describing. It's funny that you mentioned Travis. My time at Uber, we used to really argue publicly that like our competition wasn't taxi, it wasn't Lyft, it was like how people got from point A to point B. That could include walking, things like that. And in the same way with food, I think there's that opportunity of we look at kind of everything as where can we play as a part of, and hopefully in the future as a major part of a lot of people's lives.
Yeah. We'll have a few times, I'm sure, maybe for a couple questions, but before I do, I'm just curious. I mean, what's it like working with Mark Lore? I mean, he's a guy he's a serial entrepreneur, and he's had all these crazy, wonderful ventures beforehand, and he's not been in food service before. What's it like working with this force, really?
I'll take the first stab at this. I think part of the beauty about not working in the industry is you're not bound to the constraints that we've all put on ourselves. That is a really fascinating way to think about it, where traditional restaurant companies, whether it's 1 unit or 5,000 units, there's this belief system that's already out there. I think Mark has the ability to be able to break that down. But I would also say he's pretty pragmatic and pretty reasonable and listens. And if it's logical, he's like, okay. I think that part has been really fun, learning from somebody who sees the world differently, but then applying what you know, or for me, I know really well, to say, how can I make that, become reality?
Yeah, big vision, which you start with like what we're kind of trying to go after, but a willingness to, I'd say, debate, but hear out expert opinions that he's kind of brought around him in the room. I think it's really unique from that perspective for someone who has been so successful so many times, like with each venture that he has kind of started. So also definitely very challenging. Like he pushes me unlike any boss that I've had in the past. But the vision is that big. So if we weren't signing up for that, I'd say I wouldn't expect it. But it's kind of what I knew was going to happen coming here.
Right. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? This has been a fascinating conversation, by the way. Yeah, can we just... no, it'd be better if we get the microphone. There's one on the way there. We want to hear your lovely voice.
Here you go. Well, it's almost a little spooky what you guys are talking about. I mean, as a Greek restaurateur, I'm going, well, shit, what are we going to do? One question, you guys mentioned kind of Cheesecake Factory scenario, which is I looked at your thing, it's overwhelming. There's just so much. And then when you do a P-mix, some of it's got to be dry. It looks like the chicken at Mark Samuelson Chicken's pushing hard. But how do you manage the 550 SKUs? Some of them have to not be moving quite as much as the other. And do you feel... We're starting here, but we're going to end up with 5, because burgers are big, chicken's big, and sushi. But do you see, or is it where it is? It's going to be like that in 5 years, or do you feel, well, we got a lot going on, and we're going to whittle it down to these 5 top brands?
It's a great question. I think it's something we are nothing if not a company that's going to be willing to iterate. So we could go that direction. Based on what we've seen so far, I don't see the restaurant brands being whittled down.
Okay.
It's a huge task. We have like an incredibly talented team that I mentioned earlier, like supply demand planning is something that is like incredibly important here. It's important for every single restaurant, but especially when we're talking about short shelf life on that many items, you can't be stuck with a bunch of pieces of salmon and filet mignon at the end of the night, or that's going to eat into any potential profits. We've gotten really good already at that supply demand mapping and planning and projecting. And I believe over time, especially as more machine learning and automation comes into play that way, we'll actually get even better. I do think the reality here is most people, the restaurants that they love a few items, and then lots of people group around those same things as well. So it actually inherently makes it a little easier for us where we know which items you need to stock as many as possible. And we also have to be okay with, we have Chef J.J. Johnson, we opened a restaurant called Bankside with him that's heavily seafood focused. The most popular item on that menu is his lobster roll. It's okay if at 8:30 p.m. the lobster roll is sold out for the night. We kind of know that, and it's something our customers start to become accustomed to, and guess what? Gets them to come earlier in the night to make sure that they can get that item that they want.
I think, too, in the restaurant industry, typically we start small and then gradually. The difference here is wider to see what works and just be thoughtful about how you pare it down in the time that you do, knowing where the future is going.
Got a question back here?
Hi, good afternoon. I find this fascinating. I've already sent my husband, when we're in New York City next, I've got a place we have to go.
Love it.
Daniel and I will host you and have a glass of wine at Wonder with you.
I'm in. But do you see, especially with the acquisition of Blue Label, which I hadn't heard about, but do you see it to where at some point we're going to be able to order from our favorite restaurant in New York City, in Florida where I live, and be able to get it to my home and make it there at home? Or do you think that will ruin the whole what you've worked so hard to keep the food fresh and the flavor the same.
I mean, or maybe we bring it to you not just unprepared and you prepare it, but maybe we bring it to you prepared, like we're doing with Tejas Barbecue. I think, yet to be answered, but the ideal is that you can get these cuisines, not just in New York City that are famous, but in Phoenix, Arizona, like Barrio Taco. Like there's a lot of different things that these special restaurants that there's no way they're going to grow. Not with the time and everything else, we have the ability to be able to offer those types of cuisines to people all across the country.
So, quick question for you in regards to how you're quote unquote re-engineering these menus. So it
Sure.
gives. I'm very curious as to what an actual kitchen looks like. So if you take a steak from Bobby Flay, is that steak prepared the same way that it would be prepared in Bobby Flay's restaurant? And the same thing with the other recipes. How are you guys doing that? I saw some imagery that I wasn't quite sure on. Was
Yep.
stuff being rethermalized? Was it being heated up? Was it actually being cooked? Talk a little bit about how you guys are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, with I think the steak's a great example because Bobby has kind of been with us from the beginning as a partner and was actually like very challenging as a chef. So anything on any of the partner menus, it does not make it to our menu without them, the chefs giving their approval. And he was really tough on that. Of like, he actually I think was skeptical of like he had taken the money and was going to be a part of Wonder. And these are all it's non-royalty deals. These are upfront combination of kind of cash and stock in the companies. They become a true partner of Wonder. And Bobby now, he wants to sell more Bobby Flay steak, but he's also cool with a chicken sandwich from Marcus Samuelsson being sold because it's kind of rising tides. But with the steak specifically, we use the same methods of kind of preparation, things like that, how it may be finished. Whereas if it's sous vide in a restaurant that Bobby Flay was running and then goes on top of a grill, we don't have a grill in the back of our restaurants, but we do have these ovens that we have engineered all sorts of things, including the actual like vessels that they go into the oven with that get the right sear, that can cook to the exact right temperature, all of those things. He had to approve that final product, and in his case, there's actually a video that we use sometimes. We had cut it from this, where it's actually him kind of not being able to tell which one was done by his chefs in his restaurant and which was via Wonder in our method. So the output ultimately is that the same. That's the goal.
I think one of the challenges for all of us to sit here and think about is, well, how could you use technology and science to be able to make something just the same as if it were coming from a grill? The reality is people were probably saying that before refrigeration was invented, before the stove was invented. These things are coming upon us, and technology isn't just what you see digitally on your phone, it's also in science of food.
Is that somewhat of a hurdle for kind of Joe Citizen? And I mean, you probably wouldn't show those images as marketing for the public. I imagine it's like, look at this process, right? But it's all about the finished product. Is that something that, as a hurdle in terms of our minds of how we think about food is presented and what good food means and quality food? Is that a hurdle you guys have to overcome?
Maybe, but let's just all think back to if we're consumers, we go into Bobby Flay's restaurant or a Ruth Chris or Ocean Prime or whatever it might be, and what do we really care about? Does it taste good or not? It's all the same. Does it taste good or not? So start there, and I don't think people really care. As long as you're not pumping all this artificial stuff into it and everything else, which we are not doing.
Yep.
That's, I think, what consumers really care about is what is the end result? What does it taste like, and what is the value proposition of that?
Yeah, and that's a key piece. Like we're not putting in a bunch of like artificial things that enable this ultimately. It really is like trying to figure out, okay, what's the exact process so that we can do the prep work here and then ultimately finish it here in the same oven that we're able to cook this chicken here and the steak here and the fries and all those different things.
Right.
Yep.
At the time. Look, thank you for letting us throw so many questions at you. This has been really fascinating and a wonderful glimpse at how things are really about to change. So thank you so much.